thanks for coming out tonight. It's great to see so many old friends here and some new faces too. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mengus Maps. I'm one of your commissioners on Portland City Council. As of today, we've been in this role for 11 months and 8 days, and it has certainly been an epic journey. I want to thank everyone who helped us get to where we are, and everyone who helped us make progress over the last 11 months or so. I'm just going to try not to talk for too long tonight because I really want to get to your questions, but let me do a little bit of orientation for you, especially for those of you who don't follow City Hall closely. We have an odd form of government, a commission form of government, which means that I am your commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Emergency Communications, which is 911. I'm also the commissioner in charge of the Water Bureau, and I'm the commissioner in charge of Environmental Services, which a lot of you probably think of as a sewer system, but is actually a much richer and more interesting bureau than that. If you have any problems with water, environmental services, or 911, the buck very much does stop with me. Please reach out if you have any concerns around those issues, either at this meeting or send us a note. We're working really hard to get that right. In this situation, I normally go into what my broad priorities for the city are, and those tend to deal with things like houselessness and public safety, and livability and economic recovery. But this is actually a unique moment in the city. We're about to engage in our fall budgeting process, which means that as we enter the winter, one of the things that the city does is it adjusts its budget to accommodate whatever new needs we see the city facing. I should also mention that the city's budget runs on a fiscal year. So essentially for us, the year really ends on July 1. So one of the things you'll see in the headlines over the next couple of weeks, and it's this week in particular, is City Council coming together to try to figure out how we should make our budget adjustments as we head into the final fiscal quarter. And there's something that I think every Portlander should know. This fall budgeting process has to be one of the most remarkable fall bumps, as we like to say, that Portland has ever seen. Typically this is a end of the year, minor adjustments to different budget categories and whatnot. But this year is quite different. I'll tell you, we were expecting about $5 million on the table that we needed to reallocate across different bureaus. But because business tax revenues have come in so strong over the last quarter, instead of having $5 million to allocate it.
Commissioner, you muted.
There we go. So I apologize for that. I was just saying that this is a really unique budget process in that we have $60 million to allocate, frankly, over the next couple of weeks. And I wanted to give you a sense of what that process looks like and to invite each and every one of you to participate in the fall bump, either through submitting written testimony, and Jackson, I think, might be able to drop some information into the chat to tell you how you can submit written testimony. You can also show up and testify live via Zoom, and I sure hope that if you're passionate about seeing the city move in a new direction, you will do that. I want to say a couple of things about just the uniqueness of this moment. As I said, we were expecting $5 million to allocate. Instead, we have $60 million to allocate. This is good news. There's just no other way to put it. These unexpected dollars are here because Portland's economy is coming back. In many ways, it's roaring back. But at the same time, we should recognize that this economic recovery is uneven. Some Portlanders are doing great, and other Portlanders are still struggling. If you attended or watched one of our recent budget hearings, I think from last week, we had the city economist there, and he showed us how folks who are at the highest end of the income spectrum here in Portland have more than recovered from the COVID recession. They are about 5 or 10% richer today than they were pre-COVID. On the other hand, as you work your way down the income ladder, the recovery is much less robust. For middle income families, they've seen their incomes drop about 20% in the last 20 months. And if you are a low income earner, those folks have seen their incomes drop by 30, if not more percent over the last 20 months. So while we are both recovering robustly, one of the things I'm keenly aware of is that our recovery is uneven. So one of the things I want to do is both keep the recovery going, but also make investments to help Portlanders get by as they still try to get back on their feet after this really remarkable moment in history. I want to hit a couple of highlights in the budget that I care about a lot. Probably 2 weeks ago or so, you might have heard a lot about the city and county coming together to put together a coordinated packages of services around houselessness. I have some questions about some of those proposals, but by and large, I am supportive. I'm particularly excited about the $6.5 million that the city and county are proposing to use to clean up unsanctioned camps. We're also going to set aside $1.3 million to do outreach and direct engagement to folks who are living on the streets. And we have set aside and are proposing to spend $500,000 to pick up trash along the side of the highways. That's on top of the additional investments that we've already made in houseless services. But I believe that these particular investments will make a big difference in the quality of life and the humanity of life for folks who are sleeping out on the streets. And as we head into this next couple of weeks where we're going to be making some hard decisions about how to invest city dollars, I want to share with you some of the principles that are going to be guiding my decision making. First, I care deeply about public safety issues. I think a lot of you know that 2021 has been the deadliest year in Portland's history. At this point, we're way above 70 homicides in this calendar year. That's more than Portland has ever seen before. That's why one of the things I'm doing right now is doubling down on the challenge that I've issued to council to take the steps that we need to take in order to reduce homicides in Portland by 20% over the next year. I think this budget moves us in that direction. If you're excited about that, and I see Terry just gave me a thumbs up, I sure hope that you'll reach out and let my colleagues on council know that this is something that you support. One of the other things that I care about deeply is making a dent in houselessness here in Portland. So I'm looking for a package of houselessness proposals that will get at least 1,000 people who are currently sleeping on the streets housed by the end of 2022. I think given the investments that we have on the table, this is something that we can accomplish. Another thing which is deeply important to me, and I think is important to the quality of life in our city, is it's time for us to make progress on the trash and litter that we see out on the streets. So I'm looking to support proposals that will basically get Portland cleaned up by the time we get to summer. And frankly, I think the investments that have been proposed can actually get us back to where we were in terms of just livability issues, trash, graffiti. I think that we can catch up on basically 20 months of ignoring basic maintenance within the next 6 months if we follow through with some of the investments that are on the table. And lastly, one of the things that is deeply important to me is to remember the folks out there who are still struggling to recover from the COVID recession. As I mentioned before, if you're at the low end of the income spectrum, you are still struggling. You know, I'm your commissioner in charge of water and sewers, and I can tell you we have more than $20 million in unpaid utility bills that have accumulated over the past 20 months. I've done everything in my power to not cut off anyone's water and to not send any bills to collections. But eventually, I'm obligated by law to try to collect on these issues, which is why I think it's really important that one of the things council does in this fall budgeting process is set aside dollars that help low-income Portlanders and small businesses that are struggling to pay their water and sewer bills. And I will be bringing forward an amendment to that effect next Wednesday in City Council session. There are many other things which are baked into this proposed budget, it's a very fresh process. I believe our deadline for getting budget proposals was about an hour and 15 minutes ago. Frankly, I'm not quite sure what all my colleagues are proposing because this is so new. On the other hand, I'm excited to see it. We'll be talking about these issues in council this Wednesday. I hope that you'll tune in, and I hope that you will make your voices heard by submitting written testimony or showing up to testify for 2 minutes via video. And with that, instead of rambling on for another 45 minutes, why don't I pause here and create some space for dialogue. So if anyone has any questions or statements you'd like to make, this would be a great time to put forward your ideas. Great, and I see hands going up.
Yeah, and before we start with the questions, I also just want to ask folks if you can keep it to 2 minutes or less. We do have quite a few people in the room, and we'd like to hear from as many people as possible. So we'd really appreciate if you can, keep it to 2 minutes or less. And we did start off with a few questions in the chat. So I'm going to alternate between chat and hands. So it's a little fair for folks. The first is really a comment from Tom Hippie that he would like to advocate that the bump funds be for houselessness to include more of a focus on mental health services. Current planning addresses housing vouchers and congregate shelter, but those items serve the low-hanging fruit of houselessness. More focus is needed for difficult cases.
I could not agree with you more. Indeed, that's been one of the backroom discussions that I've been having with my members of council over the last several weeks. One of the things that is missing in Portland are frankly access to treatment beds. And I've been trying to convince my colleagues on council to basically double the number of treatment beds that are available to folks who are undergoing mental health issues. I think it would have made a lot of sense to connect those treatment beds to our behavioral health unit, which is a special team in the police department that specifically deals with folks who are mentally ill and violent, frankly. Barb is happy there. I'll tell you, I haven't been able to find 2 other votes there. And here's the compromise, which has happened here, is the county is increasing its capacity for mental health beds as part of their budget process. Over on the city side, we had an opportunity to do the same. There were other priorities that folks had, but here's the deal that I've made with the mayor. We all know that we need to expand the treatment bed access in the city. And some of that is about capacity, and some of that, frankly, is about systems and policies that don't work. When I wasn't able to find 3 votes to double the number of treatment beds that are associated with the behavioral health unit, I went to the mayor and said, Mayor, if we can't afford to do this right now, at least be a thought partner with me to figure out, new policies and steps that we can take to actually expand the number of treatment beds that we have today. I think if we want to really reform policing, for example, and I think that we do, one of the things that we need to do is build a system that provides a continuum of care. I think we're all tired of the cops showing up and arresting a mentally ill person, maybe taking them to jail for a couple of hours and then having them be out on the street. The missing piece is to reimagine police so that when they interact with someone who's going through a mental health crisis, being able to connect them to services. Now, the county will significantly expand their mental health beds, and that is a good thing. I think there are things that we should have done on the city side too. I haven't found the 2 other votes that are going to support me on this. But we are increasing our capacity, and I have a commitment to the mayor to work with me to figure out new policies and new programs that will allow us to achieve that goal, where we actually can provide people with a continuum of care.
Thanks, Commissioner. And then Kayleen, I think I saw your hand come up as one of the first.
Hi, Commissioner Maps. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you. I just wanted to verify first one thing in the beginning. The windfall is a one-time use. It is not be continued into fiscal year 2023. So any funding we spend is one-time use. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I added up the 18.9 million on homelessness, the 7 million on public safety, and the 2.2 million on economic recovery. It adds to 28.1 million, which is about 45% of the 62-ish million. Where's the rest of the money going?
Oh, I don't have the entire, we will have proposals before us. I know the Parks has some proposals in there. PBOT has some proposals in there. There will be some, I believe we'll see some initiatives around climate change coming forward. If you haven't seen a formal document, it's like, I suspect by the morning you might actually see a comprehensive list. One of the things that is happening is this is happening in real time. Everyone was supposed to get their proposals in by 90 minutes ago. So it's still quite fresh. Basically, there are proposals on the table. Last time I looked, for at least $55 million of things. And I suspect we might be in a position now where we have more proposals on the table than we do have dollars on the table. But the other initiatives, for the most part go to Parks, PBOT, and some planning efforts around environmental protection, and some planning efforts around economic recovery.
So if we have decided as a city, and I have reviewed every commissioner's webpage looking for the priorities, and thank you for listing on yours some key indicators that can be measurable. You're the only one who did that, so thank you for that. Houselessness, public safety, and economic recovery are the three priorities for the city. If we are not funding those programs with this windfall, then we are not supporting the priorities of the city. We have been in economic or a housing crisis for 5 years. So that's one point I wanted to make, is that funds, if you don't flow funds to the priorities, it's just a wish list. So the fact that only 45% of the money is going to the top three priorities that the city has agreed on is a shame.
Kathleen, I don't disagree
Kayleen,
with you.
yeah.
Kayleen, I'm sorry, I apologize. Kayleen, I completely agree. One of the ways I've tried to shape this debate is City Council has laid out what its fundamental priorities are: houselessness, public safety, livability. And as my colleagues have put forward proposals around these issues, one of the things we've tried to point out is let's focus in on our priorities. And exactly as you mentioned, let's be cognizant of the fact that these are one-time dollars. So, hiring someone to do a job, if we can't finish the job in a year, we probably shouldn't hire that person, is my thought. And that is the principle I will embrace as we vote on individual line items.
Okay, and I know I probably used my 2 minutes, but I just have one
That's
more
all right.
comment. So I looked at a news release, a media event that happened on November 1st, and the city is putting up $18.9 million to address houselessness. The county is putting up $19.2 million. The $18.9 million is still to be voted on. So technically the media release that happened on November 1st is still in the planning stages. It's not confirmed. Is that correct?
Yes, well, the county is in a similar position as the city is. So their business taxes came in higher than they expected. They're going through their own budgeting process. And one of the things that happened at the front end of our budgeting process is the mayor, I'll congratulate the mayor, Commissioner Ryan, and Chair Kafori for their leadership here. They said, you know, given the fact that we both have new dollars on the table, why don't we sit together? Why don't we sit down together to see if we can come up with a package of proposals that really address some of our joint priorities? So the county put together a package of proposals and the city put together a complementary package of proposals. Both the city and the county are going through their budget processes at the same time. One of the things that you will notice happens as this plays out is the county will vote on their budget decisions first. So we will know what the county does before we have to do any votes on the city side. And I frankly have not had a chance to check in with the county today to see where they are at. When I checked in last time, it seemed like there was a rough consensus on the county side around what they agreed upon sort of budget split looks like and what they would invest in.
So the
But-
18.9 and the 19.2 are not confirmed yet.
Not confirmed yet. I
Okay,
think
which is the
that's correct.
$38 million package. Okay,
That's correct. We're still waiting for the county to vote on their piece of it.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
Sure.
Thank you, Kayleen. So the next question is from the chat from Ron Lester. The question is, if the form of city government changes to a more geographical representative form, so Southeast, Northeast, Northwest, etc., how do you see that impacting the district coalition / neighborhood association structure?
That's a great question. I don't know that it necessarily would. Certainly, as I imagine what our new districts look like, should we move in this direction? Certainly, you know, the natural groupings, I think, would be neighborhood coalitions. This will also be covered by voting rights law. So each of our districts will have to contain roughly the same number of people. So that's going to be a redistricting / gerrymandering issue. But, you know, I think of Portland as being a city of neighborhoods, and I find the coalitions to be a very convenient and time-tested tool for clustering public opinion. So I would imagine that that would be the rough basis of how we go about drawing those new electoral districts, should we move in that direction, which I would support.
Can I ask a follow-up on that, please?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Ron.
Sure. When I look at the existing structure, first of all, it's forums like this that afford us the civic engagement process that we've had in this city since the mid-70s. And there are other names that I see here that would probably confirm my opinion that our ability to engage the city's bureaus and agencies have had a sharp decline over the years due to some forces that are obvious and some that may not be so obvious. So my utmost concern would be the significant or the pending decrease, if you see that, I think the city can go in terms of the accessibility of civic engagement. So if we do go into this district area, which I think has merit, first of all, I do agree with you that we do have to get away from this myopic form of government that we have, as ineffective as it is. But if we have like a Northeast section, Northeast represents roughly 17 neighborhood associations, which by, common management practices automatically, makes it ineffectively to be governed. So my concern, I guess, is that we be cognizant and aware of what a change can do to the accessibility of citizen involvement in our government. I think we should outline as a fundamental goal that whatever change the city government takes, we keep in the forefront of the government itself and the processes that we have as open and free of civic engagement as we had and hope to have in the future. So I just look at 17 neighborhood associations from one district representative in the Northeast, which is probably the smallest of all the geographical representative neighborhood associations. Something's got to give. And again, my concern would be whatever we do not diminish the accessibility of our civic engagement processes. Thank you.
And thanks, Ron. I love your thinking there. I very much agree with you. I think the instinct to move towards, for those of you who aren't fully following this conversation, right now, every member of city council runs citywide. There's some ideas on the table to maybe switch that out. And I've changed the way we elect members of council. Maybe instead of running citywide, we would run through neighborhood-based electoral districts. So you might have a city council representative from Northeast Portland, Southwest, so on and so forth. Ron, one of the things I would very much encourage you to do is to reach out and either send an email or show up via Zoom at one of the Charter Review Commission's meetings. We have a citizens group that has been meeting for about a year now to figure out what changes we want to make to our city charter. They're collecting ideas. I expect them to come back to the people of Portland this summer with a package of proposals, which they've already said one of the things they want to look at is how we elect members of council. I know they're still thinking. I think they are committed. The last time I checked in on them, I think they had they were leaning towards expanding the number of people who are on city council. I'm not quite sure what they're thinking in terms of how they go about getting elected. But I didn't appoint anybody on that committee, but I'll tell you, in my interactions with them, I think I found them to be well-intentioned and open to feedback. So if you submit testimony to them, outlining your ideas, I think there's a pretty good chance it'll be taken seriously.
I think I have 20 seconds left on my 2 minutes.
Sure.
I think the biggest fallacy that's reported upon the citizens of Portland during the vote for city councilmen, for commissioners, is that, and I'll exclude you seriously, and I do mean this, it's been evident in the past that people run for city council based on their desire to do good, and they get elected based upon their history of perhaps civic engagement, their history of perhaps engaging the city on matters, and their history of social awareness.
Sure.
Once they get elected, they're now dutifully managers of bureaus. And yet the issue of one's ability to manage a bureau rarely, if ever, comes into play when citizens vote for city council people. And that's the biggest fallacy and hole in the wall that I see that our current system have. If we're going to continue this craziness, resumes on the ability of performance in managing people, managing bureaus, should be in the forefront of their resume for why they should be city council. Not to pick on any individuals, but prior commissioners have shown the evidence of how their inability to manage people and bureaus can be devastating to a city agency, to a city bureau, and to the impact that it has, the adverse impact on citizen engagement. No names, because we all know who they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
I agree with your analysis.
I'm going to move us on to keep the conversation going. Barb Rainish, I believe you're next.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so I'm on like 2 devices. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I met you a while ago at Ann Casper's small gathering before you were appointed, and I feel like I know everyone because instead of watching TV, now I've been watching city council.
Oh gosh.
And don't no, I'm just saying, so it's like, and I'm involved in a whole bunch of things, including the PSEP, the Portland Committee on Community Engagement, Behavioral Health Subcommittee, and Behavioral Health and homelessness and all kinds of other things. And I'm super concerned and annoyed that one of your fellow council members made an argument for not expanding the behavioral health unit of the Portland Police Bureau, because I know better, based on something in the Kokel report, when that report at the end of December last year was all for putting back those other 2 teams. And I think that those other 2 teams, even though it's not, what do I want to say? Even though it's one-time money, I think it can be an archway money that can be used because those teams were addressing what you're talking about with homelessness. And so I'm really, really disappointed in the mischaracterization of that, and I don't know how to handle that. So that's number one. in terms of embarrassing, I mean, so number two, I love that we want to clean up the city. And I engage with Safety Off the Streets and a Home for Everyone. And I love Huckerp and I love the name. So I'm not in for changing that. But we can clean up a lot of stuff and add a lot of hygiene without sweeping people. And with regard to sweeping people, and since we're not just keeping with fall bump money stuff right now, I really don't want, with alternative shelter projects, I really don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. And I'm really disappointed with the speed or lack thereof that some things are moving. I don't know how much time I still have. And I don't know if you need to comment back or anything, because I
Well,
think you agree with me.
Yeah, I sure do, Barb.
I do have one other comment to
sure,
make.
no, please make your, please, let's hear your third observation.
My final thing, and it's also, I don't know that the Fire Bureau has asked for any money, but I watched a building burn down that was an abandoned building on 28th and Powell. And guess what? I listened to the fire scanner too. So that was like the third one in as many weeks. And the amount of money that that has to take for the Fire Bureau to put out those fires, first of all, to find out that the people, that the first alarm doesn't have any hoses to hook up water, is why buildings next to it got so much damage. There's no doubt. I was on hold with 911 when they showed up. I could watch. It was an inferno. I'm, BOIC is messed up and I'm happy to help fix that. I don't know what else to say.
Well, Barb, thanks for sharing your observations and concerns. I share a lot of them too. Going back to the budget discussion that you mentioned, I agree. I think there were some mischaracterizations of the record there. We were short on time, so I just let the discussion move forward. But certainly, as we return to these issues on Wednesday, I will try to clarify the record for folks. Sweeps, I hear you on sweeps too. And I think every Portlander feels a lot of humanity towards the folks who are living on the streets right now, especially as the weather turns. One of the things that I really believe is that we have to do better by the houseless community. My personal goal is to see 1,000 fewer people sleeping on the streets a year from now than we see today. I think we can get there. I also think that we need to be mindful about how we get from where we are today to where we want to go. Commissioner Ryan is doing heroic efforts to try to set up 6 safe rest villages. These are places where people can move to, which will provide them with a safe place to sleep and access to care. We're hoping that folks will just be in those spaces for about 2 or 3 months and then move into more stable housing. I also want to reassure you, anytime we sort of reach out and try to move a camp, we typically do months of outreach beforehand. And one of the things that gets the press rarely comments on is, at least since I've been on council, when we do the outreach, about 30 or 40% of the folks who are sleeping in, let's say, Laurelhurst or Delta Park or some of the other big encampments actually take us up on the offer to kind of engage in city services and go into a more stable shelter. So the system, is not working well enough, but it is sort of working. So that is that's quite important. One of the other things that has been hampering us is that because of COVID, we've been doing social distancing in our shelters, which meant that we've lost about 40% of our shelter capacity. Now, as we get as we move into the post-COVID phase and more vaccines are in people's arms, I hope that we'll have more space to house people. I think we're moving in that direction. One of the things one of the ongoing conversations that I'm having is with the Multnomah County Chair to figure out, when exactly the moment is when we can open up our shelters more fully again and get people housed. I think we're real close there. That's ultimately a health department call. But if you look at the numbers that they're looking at, I think that as we head into winter, we will have many more shelter beds available in the very near future than we've had in the past. So that's good news. And I completely agree and share your concerns about fire. As you kind of mentioned, amongst my responsibilities, I'm the commissioner in charge of 911. So it's my responsibility to dispatch in real time, fire trucks, ambulances, cop cars to where they need to be. I'm deeply concerned about, the number of fires that we're seeing. That is both, ironically, it's a summer problem because of forest fires and just heat and whatnot. But it's also a winter problem because in winter, what you tend to see is tent fires and people sort of squatting in houses, trying to keep themselves warm through inappropriate means. And I suspect, I haven't heard the report out on what happened on that fire on Powell, but I suspect that's probably what it was. Frankly, I don't think it's part of this budget proposal, but one of the things that I certainly would support is beefing up the fire department's ability to do outreach to houseless folks to do fire prevention because it's a dire problem. Frankly, a lot of the fire deaths that we tend to see actually come during this season when someone sets a tent on fire when they're sleeping in it. So it really is a matter of life and death.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Sure.
And the next statement, it's more of a ask for a commitment, but also asking you to address a quote from the recent article in the Willamette Week regarding houselessness. So it says, City of Portland officials have received 100,000 emails and office holders are furious. And the 10-year, $2.5 billion Metro Supportive Housing Services measure passed by voters in 2020 pays for short-term shelter as well as the shorter-term fixes county officials prefer. Shelter enforcement refers to ensuring that if such shelters get built, people use them. The 100K emails sent to city officials relate to the objective lack of progress on homelessness and crime issues, despite a declared emergency in effect since 2015. Please respond to these allegations with specific plans, a timeline, and your exact plans for dealing with these. And this comes from Keith Combs.
Thanks for the question, Keith. Well, I am here. I want to do a nod to Jackson. So Jackson on my staff is the guy who is reading your 100,000 emails, or I hope we haven't gotten 100,000 emails to our office, but we literally get hundreds, if not thousands of emails to the office every week, and almost certainly the issues that people care about most deal with public safety and houselessness. But I think I have a fairly clear record on the public safety side. One of the things that's just true about Portland is that for a city of our size, we are just under-policed. You'd expect Portland, given our size, to have about 1,200 police officers. As of today, we have about 800, and we lose about 12 officers to retirement or moving to some other job every month. This is a dangerous dynamic. I've called on council to put together a plan to begin to beef up our police department, to begin to address that deficit in the number of cops we have out on the street. You'll see in this package proposals for our retire rehire program. One of the dynamics here is, as I mentioned before, we lose about 12 cops a month to retirement. And because of the way retirement packages work in the city in Oregon, there are incentives for folks to retire at certain points in their career. And one of those points is coming up in July when we could lose as many as 74, I think, police officers to retirement. One of the things that I support is the mayor's proposal to put together a package to try to incentivize some of those folks to stick around in the police department for another couple of years, then I think we also really need to get back to the basic work of rebuilding our police department. And, you know, ironically, one of the reasons why we struggle so much for this is that as the police bureau has faced budget cuts in recent years, one of the choices that previous councils have made was to gut the infrastructure that we use to hire police officers. So this means recruiters and background checkers. And so for the past year or so, we basically haven't been able to onboard new police officers because we couldn't get them through the background checks. So one of the things that I push for, it's not a big budget item, but it's in the fall bump, is to, you know, hire, I believe, 2 more, if not 3 more background checkers and hire recruiters so that we can at least begin the process of bringing officers back on board. And then in terms of houselessness, I completely agree. I completely understand why Portlanders are frustrated and heartbroken by the current state of houselessness in Portland. One of the things I've tried to do is set a concrete goal in terms of where I want to see us go. And where I want to see us go is a year from now, I want to see 1,000 fewer houseless people sleeping on the streets than we have today. I think that we can get there. How do we get there? One of the ways in which we get there is that we bring online Commissioner Ryan's Safe Rest Villages. That'll take care of several hundred. One of the things that you'll likely hear me talk about later on this week is I want to issue a new challenge to my colleagues on council to make sure that every vet in Portland, or that there are no houseless vets in Portland. We don't have great data right now because we haven't gone out and done a houseless survey for about a year or so. But our best estimates are that there are about 500 vets who are sleeping on sidewalks tonight. That is both unacceptable, and it doesn't need to be that way. I think there are resources to actually house those folks. And one of the things that I think that we need to do over, frankly, the course of the next 2 years is to develop the political will and plan to get our 500 houseless vets back inside. I've already mentioned, you know, our increase in shelter capacity, which will come as we do less social distancing in shelters. So that's going to provide us with extra beds too. And then, of course, on top of this, we have you know, tens and tens of millions of dollars being invested in housing issues by the city, the county, and Metro. I think amongst all of this, you know, we are ultimately on a glide path to, I think, get on top of houselessness. One of the things you'll see me do is to set clear goals on where we want to go, and then support packages that move us closer to goals. And frankly, I'll hold myself and, you know, local government accountability for failure to reach our goals in terms of public safety and houselessness in particular.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Sure.
Mark and Karen, you had your hand up early.
Hey, Mark. Hey,
Hi,
Karen.
thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? We have several devices that are
Yeah.
interconnected here. I'm hoping that you are, by responding to my question, going to make our Thanksgiving dinner, our table, a little less fraught in our discussions.
Uh-oh.
My daughter's partner, well, there's concern that there's a lot of talk in kind of the non-traditional circles that police are doing an intentional slowdown right now to foster their claims for money and blah, blah, blah. And some of the concerns that have emerged in our family, not for me, but that the fact that you have taken money in elections from police associated bureaus means you can't or won't be able to have the clarity to make budget decisions that could also affect policy decisions. So could you comment on that, just so that maybe we could have a little peace at dinner?
Sure. Well, you know, I was, this goes back to the campaign. I was endorsed by the PBA, the union that represents the police bureau during the campaign. That wasn't surprising to me. I talked during the campaign the same way I talked today. And also I'm pro-labor, and this is one of the things that I think is quite important. I think people have the right to organize around their working conditions. I can tell you there are, I'm not impacted by endorsements or donations. I participated in public financing for my campaign. So, you know, I'm not a big dollar candidate, and I'm not a corporate candidate. I'm not even the cops candidate. But one of the things I do think is that Portland obviously faces a public safety problem. You know, we have, I think at this point, 74, maybe 75 homicides in Portland. That's more than we've seen in our city's 170-year history. I'll tell you, about 2/3 of those folks who are being who die on our streets due to gun violence are people of color, and that is an equity issue that the city has to face. You know, do I believe that we should build back the same police department that we had in the 80s or 90s or aughts? No. You know, the work before us today is to actually reinvent policing. Early on in this conversation, I talked about my disappointment in not getting treatment beds that are associated with the behavioral health unit. Those are the cops who deal with mentally ill folks. You know, and that's an example, I think, of meaningful police reform, reimagining what the police do and providing them with the tools to, you know, integrate with the rest of our public service system. And you know, that's what I consistently am trying to do in the context of our public safety arena. You know, I think there is work to be done in terms of both reimagining it and to right-sizing it. Part of what we never get a chance to talk about is that as we grow, I do think that we need to actually think about what the police need to do differently. And I think one of the things that the police need to do differently is we need to get them out of the business being our first responders for mental health issues and poverty issues. And you've seen my work on trying to make Portland street response a real thing. You know, that is exactly what that's about. My push to get behavioral health beds connected to police services is also part of this movement. You know, and I'm actually really encouraged by this. I think that it's a challenging space. Portland's not unique in kind of struggling with these challenges. And I don't know what's going on in every city around America, but I know I've been in an awful lot of meetings about how to do public safety better in Portland. And I think that within the next 4 to 5 years, we can actually have a fundamentally different public safety system in this city. You know, I think we can get cops out of the business of policing poverty. I think we can get more mental health beds. I think we can focus more on rehabilitation and less on punishment. That's where I'm trying to go. And I think we're making progress. I don't know if I brought, Karen, I don't know if I brought peace to your Thanksgiving table. That might be, that might be above my pay grade, but that's what I'm trying to
I will
accomplish.
certainly bring your comments, and maybe I'll drop Jackson an email and let him know how it works out. Thank
Oh
you
yeah,
so
please
much.
do.
Thank you. So the next question, or more of a ask here, is from Daniel McElliott. He says, thanks for listening to us. I was very disturbed by your colleague's response to the brave woman's testimony last Wednesday that spoke about the fear she experienced from the people that are camping beside her home on I-205 multi-use path. This location has had high impact camping for the past 6 years. I cannot understand how these campsites don't fall under the current criteria for cleanup. Please be the only commissioner to hear her plea.
I remember this testimony vividly, broke my heart. You know, Portlander, Spanish speaker, at least as a primary language, you know, suffering, you know, living adjacent to really a favela of tents, being consistently threatened by, you know, folks with drug issues who, you know, try to intimidate neighbors. The fact that the city doesn't have a more robust response to this, I think is a failing and one of the shames in our city. I'm deeply committed to both providing the public safety services that, you know, that woman needs in order to be safe in her home, and the housing and mental health services that the folks who are living in those tents need in order to get their lives back on track. And I'm talking to my colleagues on this. I don't think there's anyone in council who wants to see people living on the streets. I think there might just be a disagreement about how we get there. But I want you to know that this is what, Katie and Jackson and Yvette and I, this is a lot of what we do when we get up in the morning and zoom into work. I think that we will make progress between the investments that the city, county, and metro have made. We're going to be spending a tremendous amount of dollars to get people housed. I think that our plans are fundamentally sound. We're catching up from 20 months of neglect. But one of the exciting things about this moment is that we really are exiting the pandemic moment. We're in a post-pandemic moment, so the COVID is still with us, but after just not picking up garbage for 20 months and not asking anyone to move their tent for 20 months, we're actually beginning to re-engage with basic maintenance and public services around the city. I think a year from now, the Portland that we look out on and live in will be fundamentally different and fundamentally better than the Portland that we have today.
Thanks, Commissioner. And I think we're almost at time. I think this might be our final question. So Matthew Carter.
Hey, Matthew.
Hey, can I change gears on you completely?
Sure.
Totally new topic.
Okay.
Since you're the Water Bureau guy.
Okay.
All right. So way back before your time, the city of Portland and the federal government had a battle in the courts for decades over our water system.
Yep.
Our water system is basically surface water, goes into a pipe, comes out your tap. It's really close to drinking from a stream. And the feds didn't like that, and they wanted us to treat it. And we kept saying, no, there's nothing wrong with the water, it's clean. And so we eventually lost the lawsuits.
Yeah.
And so the city engineers, the Water Bureau engineers, were asked to put together proposals for how to do this. They came up with two proposals. One was ultraviolet light, and the other was sand filtration. Ultraviolet light at the time was about 1/5 the cost to build, and its recurring costs were far, far less. We had a city commissioner at the time who had an objective to get fluoridation in our water, and had been working on that, even though the public had voted it down multiple times. And I don't want to get on the issue of fluoridation. Yeah. I respect the people's right to vote on it. They said no, no means no. So we ended up with this sand filtration plant. The people out in Clackamas County hate us for it. And its costs are exploding. It's now, I think, at 25 times cost of an ultraviolet system. Its recurring costs are blowing up. Local districts that buy water from us have looked at these exploding costs and said, hey, we're getting out of our contract. They're putting in their own water systems. So you have a rock and a hard spot here on costs. This sand filtration thing has just become absurdly expensive. It will cost huge amounts to run. And the people who offset our costs, who buy water from us, are getting out. So there's a two-part question. Can we say, okay, we really don't want sand filtration, cut our losses and put in an inexpensive ultraviolet light system? Or if we really, really want this fluoridation option, is there any way to address these exploding costs? Because it's going to be super expensive real soon.
Oh, well, Matthew, that is a change of gears. I'll be frank with you. I'm a Portlander, so I remember the fluoride debates and the filtration plants debates and the failure to account for the cost of the pipe debates and whatnot. I was appointed your water commissioner, and I've looked closely at this. And you're right about a couple of things. One is the federal government is mandating that we build a new filtration plant. And really the miracle here is that we got away with not having a filtration plant for so long. So it's something about, frankly, the influence that our congressional delegation had with the federal government in the 20th century, I suspect. I've looked at what our options are in terms of water filtration. And I don't know if I would characterize it exactly the way you do, but there's some benefits to the plan that we have right now. Fluoridation is, our ultraviolet light is definitely cheaper. On the other hand, it provides us with less protection. And here's the real concern that I'm worried about. Should we have a fire in the wrong place in Bull Run, it could take out our water supply for the entire city. The water filtration plant that we're going to build actually would provide us with a response to that. We Portlanders would still have water if we had a fire in the wrong place. So that is something which is, I think, quite important. I hear your concerns on the cost of this. I think by the time it's all done, it'll be about $1 billion project. And that's a huge number. I'll tell you, one of the things I do as a manager here at the city is to try to ride that number, keep it as low as possible, but also build a water filtration system that will make sure that, you know, Portlanders 100 years from now, when they turn on their taps, the water that comes out is clean and safe to drink and abundant for everybody. This will be a story that will be unfolding over the course of the next couple of years. And so I encourage you to hold me accountable for this as I try to deliver a safe, clean, reasonably priced water filtration system. But I don't see at this point how we can go back to ultraviolet.
Yeah, so just one final comment. It's a long
Sure.
time Portlander. When they turn on the South Shore well fields, I can tell the difference in the taste.
Yeah.
And the sand filtration plant is going to change the taste of our wonderful water. And what my main reason for UV is I like the taste of our water.
Sure.
Keep it the way it is. So.
Well, I will. The next time I met with my water bureau director today, one of the things I'll ask her the next time we talk is, will the taste of our water change? I don't want that either. And if that's the case, I'll see if I can change something. Thank you, Matthew.
Right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. If we didn't get to answer your question, you can follow up with us by emailing mapsoffice@portlandoregon.gov. Katie dropped that link email address in the chat box, and Jackson will do his work and get back to you as soon as he has some answers for you. So again, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Again, also repeating Commissioner Mapp said earlier, if you're able to come out and testify, whether it is written support or verbal testimony coming up on Wednesday for the way you'd like to see the money that the city will be voting on in the next couple weeks, I definitely encourage you all to do that. And if you have any questions on how to do that, feel free to reach out to our office as well. All right. And I think that's it. So
Right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Hi, everybody.
Yvette.
Thanks so much for coming out.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming out today. We'll do another event along these lines in about 2 months, and I sure hope that we see you Wednesday at our budget hearing. Be well and stay safe.